of the sensory perceptions. And instead of the sensory perception coming in and saying, I'm going to have alcoholic refreshments today, the heart says, no, not today, and the mind accepts it. It is necessary for the heart, however, to lead. And the problem, of course, is what way should the heart lead? Well, the heart has to lead a much more difficult pattern than the mind. The mind depends entirely upon physical things. It depends upon the observatories, the laboratories, all the research work that is being done in every field. It requires a long and specialized education in an art or a science by which a proficiency is attained. But there is no art or science that we gain, no tremendous discovery that we make that transcends the inevitable dissolution of ourselves. In other words, whatever we have to leave behind. Whatever information we have accumulated is going to be subject to renovation and reformation. Already the Einstein theory is assailed on every hand. What we consider to be the great discovery of the moment is left behind and forgotten when new facts are discovered. So all this vast accumulation of material factors has very little essential, enduring value. And in the process of getting there, the individual has allowed the better part of himself to become corrupted and corroded. In the search for fame, in the search for wealth, in the desperate desire for public office, the individual betrays the heart and depends upon the schemes of the mind to fulfill his purposes. All these purposes are short-lived, and in a very short time, the mental coordinator and its activities cease to be of value or significance. On the other hand, the heart seems to have a different kind of life. The heart, because it is directly connected with the source of physical life, has within itself a certain germ of immortality. It has the seed of spiritual integrities as part of its own existence. It is the most tenacious thing in the world of forms. It is a tremendously vital something, living upon a force and a power which no scientist has ever been able to discover. Because all of life is invisible, and that which is invisible cannot be discussed adequately in visible terms, and certainly the invisible cannot be well recorded upon a computer, because these things depend upon visual factors. They depend upon a series of mechanical processes, and behind all mechanical processes in life is a process that is transmechanical, above it, far, far beyond it. So the heart, becoming, as we might say, the source of reality, begins to search for what we are all searching for in this world, and that is happiness. We would all like to be happy. But of course, as the Oriental mystic would say, in order to be happy, you must be right. There's no amount of wrong that can actually lead to an enduring happiness. Fulfillment of some selfish project brings a moment of thrill or excitement, but in a short time the circumstances close in and the individual finds himself in trouble. So the problem always is to find out how we can do things without violating the laws of existence, how we can transcend personal desire. Now, of course, most people find they can sacrifice their own personal happiness for some other cause. There are quite a few people that feel that way, and some do it. But for the majority, to go against the appetites of physical existence is a great hardship, a hardship that very few are interested in facing. To further complicate this point of view also, is the end of life is itself invisible. After we depart from this mortal coil, the physical factors cease, the computer has to stop because there's nothing more that it can register. But to many people, this mystery of what lies beyond is so abstract that the mind turns naturally to the addiction to things visible in this world. Therefore, we sacrifice the invisible unknown for the fulfillment of visible known appetites and ambitions. There seems to be very little way of getting around this unless we again begin to develop the power of the heart and begin to see what it can do to make these things work better. Looking around the world as it is today and as it has always been, we cannot but realize that there is something wrong. And that something wrong is the lack of natural affection. Nations do not like each other. Individuals live in a world of pressures and competitions. Country after country exploits other countries and invades them. War is in the air even while peace is being discussed. Everything in the physical world is in uproar. It is in an uproar due to the fact that just honest kindness has been lost. Now, the Buddhist philosophy goes in on this in the introduction of the Lord Maitreya. The Lord Maitreya is believed in Buddhist philosophy to be the next great avatar, the one who is to follow Gautama. And the great avatar, Maitreya, is in the Tushita heaven, waiting to come down into mortality. This is the Prince of Peace. The word Maitreya simply means kindness. The word actually means that. Therefore, the idea of the personal deity is not the important circumstance. The only answer to the problems of life is kindness. When individuals are kindly and thoughtful, then the mind is used to support thoughtfulness, and every factor that comes along is interpreted in the terms of how we can be more friendly, more kindly, more compassionate. This idea that the Prince of Peace, the one to come, the desire of all nations, is kindness, is not an abstraction. It is obviously the only answer, apart from dissolution. But the individual will accept this answer, but he doesn't know what to do about it, and he doesn't know how he can hope that it will arise in this sorrow-torn globe on which we live. But the fact of the thing remains that the kindness factor is enthroned in the heart. And outside of kindness itself, there is really no solution to problems. Now, kindness can be exploited. Unkind people can turn upon a kindly one and make life very difficult. But the person who is basically kindly cannot actually be hurt by unkindness. We are hurt by unkindness because we are offended by it, because we believe it is unjust, because we sense that it is ulterior in its motivations. But in this process, we lose the kindness factor ourselves, and then the problem is really bad. So regardless of what others do to us, the wise person is kind and moderate at all times, searching forever to find the good, and determined to build upon it. If he does this and turns his attention to society, he may be surprised on how much goodness he's going to find there. This is not the type of thing that we hear about. It's not the thing that makes the newspapers or the television programs. The good things people do are for some reason taken for granted. The bad things are dramatized. This seems to be the way of pointing out something, but most people do not get that kind of a reaction from it. They assume the rest of the world is like the individual who is delinquent on a television screen. So we go on down to what else can we do about some of these points, and we go back to the mental coordinator again. The mental coordinator, for example, is probably educated essentially by only one thing, and that is experience. The mental coordinator must derive its basic information from the things around it, because it can only depend upon the sensory perceptions for evidence. Therefore, if it is unprejudiced, open, kindly, and basic attitudes, it can and will gain a great deal from the contemplation of environment. If it is cruel and unkind and selfish and self-centered and arrogant, it will still learn a great deal from the conditions around it, because it will ultimately see all these things fail, and those who are participating in them come to grief. But the individual who is not honest is not looking for these integrities. He is denying them and clinging desperately to the iniquities. Actually, therefore, the experience factor is important to the mental coordinator. The 5 sensory perceptions are brought together under a 6th collective unit, which is called the coordinator. In this, all these things are mixed together to form perhaps a brew like the witches of Macbeth brewed in their iron pot. But also, out of all this conflict, there comes an ordering factor. We have a series of faculties in the brain to which these various pressures are assigned, and by which the various elements of character are built up. Wherever something good is found, it strengthens the faculty of that character. Therefore, if we find a generous person, a certain part of ourselves is given a lesson in generosity, and it will stay if the individual is mindful to keep it alive. If, however, generosity is regarded as a vice, then it will be forgotten as quickly as possible. But remembered or forgotten, the action will have its own honorable or dishonorable fulfillment. There's no way of escaping it. So finally, as the Zen points out, if you really want to know what the rules are, you can sit under a tree like Lao Tse did in China, on the plantation or on the estates of a great noble, and just watch. Watch the birds and the flowers and the sunshine. Watch the growing things. Watch the fruits and all the phases of nature. Watch the storms and what they do. You learn a great deal from storms, because the storm frightens us. It seems at the moment to be a terrible thing. It is a worry and an anxiety, and then a few days later the whole earth has received a baptism from that which seemed to us to be cruel or hard or harsh or dangerous. So everywhere in nature we have, as Lao Tse found, the basis and traces of wisdom. And this is what was brought together in a kind of a mystical way by the Zen folks. Zen is a philosophy of very quiet self-control without effort. It is an effortless effort. It is something that is accomplished by the firmness of relaxation, by refusing to allow the mind to be agitated, to find that we can discipline the mind so that it can do what we want it to do, and can be observant of the things we want it to observe, and not constantly leading us from one misery to another. So the Zen people, very quietly, seek to remove from their lives the causes of difficulty, on the grounds that as in Buddhism, that the attainment of illumination is a personal responsibility, that the individual has to save himself in the last analysis. It sounds a little difficult, but it is also obviously honest, that we should get over through our own efforts the things we got into by our own mistakes. So in Zen, everyone has to be his own teacher, his own guide, but he also has to live and be governed by a universal cosmotheism for which there can be no exceptions. Therefore, the duty of the mind is to study the symbols of the infinite as they are indicated in the finite, and by doing this, to gradually come to know the will of that which is invisible but inevitable. If the mind is capable